Hey, this is going to be kind of impromptu stream of conscience. Just got the idea to do it right now. Most of the best shit I've put out, and I haven't put out a lot. I don't really know how good what I put out is, but I like it, and that's pretty much the only audience I'm going for. But sorry if this isn't like fucking high quality produced. If you want that, I recommend going to the Black Lodge games. They're awesome. But I just wanted to make a video about immersion in role-playing games and why it matters. And I'm planning to get more into videos in general pretty soon. Getting some things lined up that will make that easier. But I got time now and in the next couple of days, so I might come out with some shit. But immersion, I gotta fucking define it. For the troglodytes in the audience who have no idea what the English language is. I'm just kidding. I'm using a very specific version of that term. Immersion in a role-playing game is at its basic level. It just means suspension of disbelief, or just kind of believing you're there even though you know you're not there. It's not about being crazy like some schizo or whatever. Oh, I'm really there. I'm really an ogre and within the Ring of Fire. If I punch this wall, I'll break through it. It's not like taking hallucinogenics or something, but it's like, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, we all know this is make believe, but like that, Ferrum bartender who's super racist and really greedy, and the only reason he's serving the Frayne is because the Frayne has good money. It makes for it, we can all believe it. The way he acts in a way that it's like, okay, yeah, that's a person that I could see acting like that. The characters all act in ways that fit into the world. It's about making a character and playing a character for the world. That's what immersion means. And it means that the world feels like not a real place, because obviously we all know it's not, but it feels like a place that would exist if it did exist, if that makes sense. Settings that aren't immersive, like if you ended up there, you wouldn't believe it was real. You'd think you were just dreaming. Settings that are immersive, if you ended up there like somehow multi-dimensional, multiversal bullshit or whatever, you ended up there, it would feel like a real place. Some examples of immersive settings like that within the Ring of Fire is my favorite. World of Darkness is fantastic. Old Forgotten Realms. New Forgotten Realms has been heavily infected by the 5e virus. It is in fact kind of the front man for 5e. It's so sad what they've done to that setting. It used to be the one like D&D setting that was like super popular besides Ravenloft, but Ravenloft was never super popular. So it's the one super popular D&D setting where you could feel like there was conflict, down to earth, more intimate stuff, like the anti-paladin of Bane ruling over the local, village, and he hires you, the adventurers, to go ransack some peasants, and you got to decide, who are you going to side with here? Obviously, the anti-paladin of Bane, because he has the money, and those trick-ass villagers ain't got shit. But that was a joke, but even that could be seen as immersive. You're mercenaries who have killed people and cut purses and gone to wars for the sake of coin. You're poor as shit. You need money. So, by the way, sorry if you can hear background noise. These walls are thinner than some of these androgynous D&D players I've seen. Anyway, so then why should you have immersion in your game? I've kind of alluded to it so far. Certainly talked about it in a good light because I love it. It's my number one thing in a role-playing game. Other people want like philosophy. I love that. If you do it right, it's fine. Just don't force it in, you know. They want big epic stories that can be fun. They want really cool character shit. That's extremely important, I would say, almost equal to immersion. But my bread and butter is immersion. Why? Because once you have immersion, once you can kind of believe what's going on and you can get engaged in the world, it no longer feels like a joke. Even the jokes, even the funny parts, even the Chthon being like, oh, hello, my friend, you know, or for less cultured audiences, you know, the Toreador, you know, emo, you know, My Chemical Romance t-shirt, absolute poser being, you know, talking, oh my God, you're so out of it. Oh, that's so 1880s, you know. Even that, if you're immersed in it, even that can be fun and feel real. And you know, you punch that freaking Toreador in the face, and because you're a real Toreador, freaking Scottish Highlander, stylish as all hell, flexing that bigger than a brouhaha. You know, and the reason that it doesn't feel like a joke is because you feel like it makes sense. You feel like this is just shit that you would do in the situation of these characters. And when a game feels like a joke, it's super fun for like the first 15 minutes. And then it's the worst thing ever if it just feels like a total farce. But if a game feels like a serious, cool thing that you should be doing, then you're gonna enjoy it. And that's what immersion does. So I'll give an example. A friend of mine who runs games. It's funny because immersion is not his number one priority. It's up there, but it's not his number one priority. But in my opinion, he's really, really good at it. One of the best. And I'm gonna call him Jim Bob for this. That's not his name, obviously, but he knows who he is. And he was running a Within the Ring of Fire game, which it's actually funny because he's not a huge Within the Ring of Fire fan. But I basically begged him to run it, and a few other friends of mine did too, so he ran it. And he didn't have the same concept of the setting I do. I didn't like certain ideas he had and certain things he wanted to change. And I admit I was a little bit of a bitch about it sometimes, but generally I Within the Ring of Fire is very near and dear to my heart. You have to understand. But I acted in ways sometimes that I'm not super proud of. I was like, no, you can't do that. You can't change that. He's the GM. He can do whatever he wants. But anyway, those things aside, everything felt like real and felt in its place. And I was playing this big, you know, boisterous ogre priest of he who has many names, and he's this ruthless, manipulative ogre, but he's got certain like values, right? He's valorous, he's bold, and he's gonna come in the room and he's gonna get what's his. And he's got this daughter he's trying to protect, and they're in Jelf, and he ends up getting absolutely screwed over and made into a scapegoat by this other player, and he's on the run. He's his whole thing, the Church of Legion, basically, because he slipped up like this, basically abandoning him, although he did not abandon Legion. And now you've got like the Jalfian law enforcement, or what passes as law enforcement. I love the way he played them. That they're just basically opportunistic thugs hired by like private interests, and they're popping up, and I'm in a fight, and I ended up winning that fight with just my ogre dad strength. I ended up throwing a guy out a window, and I had such a cheesy one-liner, but I forget what the exact one-liner was, but it all felt a little bit almost cartoony, but it didn't really feel cartoony because it was like, okay, this is the setting we're in. This is a place where action happens, where shit hits the fan and things get wild. It all made sense, in this hyper ultra capitalist, Calfar hellhole. So that was great immersion. Now I have an example of a player ruining my immersion. I was in a role-playing game, and this player, who is vile, everyone who knows this player, in my opinion, would agree that this player is vile, just into all sorts of weird sex stuff, and just kind of just a very mean-spirited, spiteful person. And I'm a dick, but it's all with love. It's good-spirited. I try not to pick on the people who make it clear they just don't want to be picked on, unless you're an asshole. If you're an asshole and you don't want to be picked on, you're a hypocrite, But if you're just like a nice guy and you're like, hey, leave me alone, dude, please. I'm not gonna mess with you. But this person, we will call this person, for the sake of privacy, Glub Glub. Glub Glub. They would play these like characters that were like way, way, way too like feministy. And I don't mean like strong woman. I don't mean like strong empowered woman, because I've seen that done really well in a role-playing game. I've seen female players play amazing female characters. I've seen male players play amazing female characters. Of course, usually the male players playing the female characters has not been the best in my experience. If you've done it before, and hopefully you feel ashamed, and I think you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, this player Glub Glub, it wasn't like, oh man, she's a badass, she's strong, she takes what she wants, It felt like it's like, oh yeah, she's like super vulnerable and has all these issues, but like, you need to know, by the way, all of you need to know, she's cool. Okay. It felt like that. And it felt like there were these values that the character had and that surrounded the character, like in the character's story, that just did not feel like they meshed with a disgusting, grimy world like Kavagathale. Like, I would not shoot, the next season of Sex in the City in Middle Earth. It just, the whole concept doesn't mesh. But anyway, so Glub Glub was playing this character, and then worse, they kept getting caught up on like out of character snark and like drama about like, you're a misogynist, you're a transphobe, you're this, you're that, like to like a bunch of different people in the game. And it was just kind of like, I loved that game, by the way, besides this individual Glub Glub who ended up leaving the game. It was great. I had to leave prematurely. It sucked. That was one of my favorite funny characters I ever played. Mazbak Guzba, the Goblin King. Absolute riot of a character. It was so much fun. It's just this out of character stuff kept making it like, all right, I'm having such a hard time just making this connection with the player's character, because all I can think about is like, this player has all this shit going on that they want to take to the table, and now I'm at the table, the proverbial table. It was an online game, but that's the thing. You're not immersed when you kind of go back to the table, right? And you're sitting there and you've got the Cheetos and Bob's over there, or he's drinking too much. It's kind of affecting his role play. Timmy just kind of, he's trying, but it like feels weird now. It's like he's like, my brothers, we must go to the mountaintop, and it's like, yeah, dude, okay, nobody's into it right now. Like, and it totally like just collapses. And the DM, even if he's a good DM, just the immersion is broken, and he's just there kind of like, oh shit, like, trying to get everything back on track. So now you know what immersion is, and you know why it's good in your games, and what not having immersion looks like. Now, how do you implement it? That's the sort of practical application. Practical application is what I love when it comes to role-playing games, because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters with the setting, with concepts of what make a game good, which is how you apply that in actual play. First of all, get rid of miniatures, battle maps, hex grids, all of that. They're bad. That's not my opinion. That's just the case. It's going to break your immersion. You're going to think of your character, and you're going to think of your little miniature. I mean, miniatures are fine for war games because you need them. I got nothing against war games. I have a friend who he's super nerdy about war games, but he could also just break me in half. And he plays a lot of Warhammer. He's a great guy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with war games, but miniatures, battle maps are for war games, because in a role-playing game, you cannot be thinking of the setting and of the if you want immersion, that is, you cannot be thinking of the setting and the characters, and in your head pops the battle map and the miniatures, because that's not what anyone in that world sees. That's not what your character sees. There aren't grids on the ground, none of that bullshit. Miniatures are plastic. They don't move. They don't have expressions, and they limit your creativity. So get rid of them completely. Oh, what do I do? How do I show theater of the mind, dude? And if you absolutely need to, and I've done this before, just take out a sheet of paper and just draw something out quick. If you're having a real hard time, just a quick sort of comparison. Theater of the mind. Are there problems that pop up that are maybe confusing? Yeah, but they're well worth the creativity and immersion that comes into the game. And you have all the tools to solve them right here. I'm telling you, you do not have the tools to solve the problems that come up from using miniatures and battle maps. They just stifle creativity completely. If you disagree, you're wrong. Next up, what you want to do is have a character voice. That doesn't mean an accent. That doesn't mean super different from your own voice. It can just be different intonation, vocabulary, and verbiage. For example, when I'm playing Bog Vulgus, I really go deeper and harsher with the things he says, and I take on that kind of charismatic, friendly ogre charm. It sounds different. It sounds like someone other than me. You have the Morat in the corner, the half ogre, half ferrum, yes. Back, out from my alley. Or I'll do one more that's a little bit more broad. That anti-paladin of Bane in his fortress. I want you to slaughter more peasants in the village of Hastavagan and bring me their wealth, for I have been snubbed by these creatures, and I will not tolerate a snubbing. So different voice, it sounds, of course, those were all kind of silly and simplistic, but you get what I mean. So different voice, different intonation. I would also say mood music is great, though be careful. It can also ruin the immersion if the players aren't feeling it. I've definitely had situations where I'm running a game and I bring on mood music. I'm like, yeah, like this is totally getting me in the mood of the scene. I'm feeling it, and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's the FT's favorite instrumental power metal. Great. And then I'm like, oh shoot. So oftentimes ambience, like just like ambient noise and shit, is the safest. Images are great. Actually, artistic images that stimulate the eyes and really bring you in. Feel free to get a little bit sexy with these, as long as you're not a vile degenerate. You know, I've experienced some weird shit with players. Let's just leave it at that. Beyond images, you got frickin' beyond images, sort of immersive lore, and that's different than normal lore. You don't want these big, like, and in cycle 3258, you know, just like layering on and on and on, but sort of like, kind of like have it like, oh yeah, stuff happened here and it affects the way people live here, and it's going to apply to the way we play. You know, because immersion is kind of where world building and role playing meet. It's kind of the center of the two. Role playing, just kind of how you act as your character, world building, what the world's like, and then immersion is kind of how they mesh together. So having that very interesting lore that actually kind of applies to the characters and can be interfaced with, that's another big thing. Lots of interface. And the interface, what's that? That is characters' choices and actions having a direct effect on the game world. And the thing is, a lot of GMs will have really huge, epic interface, and then maybe some surface level tiny interface, but you need it at every level. What your characters do in the bar, in the tavern, needs to have some sort of weight. It needs to, even the smallest, how they treat the bartender, right? Because that bartender is an actual person, right? He might be an extra. He doesn't need to have a hugely complicated character backstory, but there should be something going on with him. And like when he gets annoyed by these guys, he shouldn't just be like, oh, okay, here's your next drink. But if you owned a bar in like the Middle Ages and these dirty freaking like barbarian mongrels from like out of town, they come in and they're just shit talking you, and they're just kind of like, bring me another drink, peasant. And they might be scary enough that you let them do that, right? But if that's the case, you're probably going to call the guards. And if they're not scary enough to call the guards, you're just going to be like, get the fuck out of my tavern. Who even are you, dude? And you'll freaking pour that ale right on their heads, as is what they deserve. But yeah, so interface is important. And finally, make sure game time is game time. Of course, a little bit of joking is fine, but just getting way off track into out of character conversation, that is the worst. Game time is game time. Treat it with respect. There's like so many different things to add to immersion, and I might make a video about all of them or individual videos later on. But I got something I want to do in a second here. So I'm going to generally, those are the ones I'll put out there. You know, if you have other ideas of what might be, good things that I do immersion, put them in the comments. I love comments. They're cool. I get to interact with them. And I don't get a lot of them. probably because I'm extremely inactive. But I hope you heard that. The final thing I want to say is that immersive gaming really does make a difference. It's so much more fun in a role-playing game than just non-immersive gaming. And everyone who says otherwise, they've never really done immersive gaming because they haven't let themselves. They've been the one guy there at the table who's like, okay, all right, Valgorio, the bartender. Yeah, can I get a White Claw? And they've never really experienced it because they've never really participated in it. So, immersive gaming is the best. Some videos I have planned, I'm gonna find shitty role-playing games and I'm going to review them, do like a sarcastic review, like as if they were good, because I'm the barbarian dung collector and I enjoy, gathering up that shit and just and just delving deep into it. So yeah, I might call it Barbarian Dung Collector, Dung Reviews or Shit Reviews or something. Yeah. Anyway, I am one of the greatest FTs in the world. I am Buttquack. I am the Barbarian Dung Collector. Underwood is my king, and Jesus Christ is my God. And the Black Lodge Games is my favorite podcast. Y'all have a good day. Goodbye.